Clinical Consultation Network. Appreciate you being here today. As you know, we do this every Tuesday now at our new time, which is 12:30 p.m. Central Time. So I hope you can continue to join us at this time because we have got a great slate of presenters over the next several weeks and some really great case studies to look at. The one for today is especially good. It's going to be all about the Successful Citizen Program, which Dr. Andy Wood and I have been talking about for some time. And so I'm finally glad to get he and Shannon Westerman and Jerry Winters on here with us today to talk about that program, tell us more about it, hopefully to get other people to replicate this great program that they have. Also, in a couple of weeks, we're going to have Dr. Rick Amato, January 28th. Dr. Rick Amato is a specialist in clinically oriented person-centered services. And so he's going to be a great presenter that we've got coming up in a couple of weeks. We've got another great presentation, case presentation for next week. So we've just got a really good slate coming up. I hope you can join us over the next several weeks to enjoy these really great presentations that we have. Now, today, it's with much pleasure that I'm able to introduce Dr. Andy Wood, Shannon Westerman, and Jerry Winters, and I'm going to let them tell a little bit about themselves and kind of introduce themselves. So at this point, Andy, Dr. Wood, I will turn this over to you. Okay. Dr. Wood.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yay. All right.
Very good. So we were about to do introductions. Can you guys just give us a brief introduction for each of you?
Yes. Hi, this is Jerry Winters. I'm with the Customer Focused Service Department.
This is Shannon Westerman. I'm a senior psych examiner here in the East Regional offices.
Okay, and I'm Andy Wood. I am the BA Unit Director at the East Regional Office, and I guess I expected us to tell a little more about ourselves.
Yes, please do. So go a little bit beyond that.
41 plus years ago began working at Green Valley Developmental Center and was there for roughly 16 years before going to the Jordan Center, working in both of those locations as a psych examiner. And at the Jordan Center, back in those days, was kind of where much of the concept of this Successful Citizen program that we're doing had its roots. I guess midway through my tenure at the Jordan Center, I was reclassified to a behavior analyst. From there, I went to the Middle Regional Office somewhere around the turn of the century, and then in the early part of that century, I came here to beautiful East Tennessee, where I will also plug we're about to have in the regional office a staff behavior analyst position available for any behavior analysts out there who love the mountains. This is the place to be. So, anyway, our Successful Citizenship program, basically what it's all about is, if I can get our PowerPoint to operate, that's been also if any behavior analyst who is interested is a middle schooler with tech-savvy skills, they're more than welcome, because I think that's been our biggest obstacle when we've had our focus groups. But it's a series that we've put together of focus groups where we're meeting with individuals and helping them, providing them with the information on things to do that will increase the likelihood of their being a successful and important member of their community.
So, Andy, look, or Dr. Wood, let me ask you this: Did I understand that are you meeting in person with people for these focus groups, or is it? The reason I'm asking is because you mentioned tech, whether you need some tech savvy people.
Yeah, okay.
Are you doing this on the web?
No, so far it has been all face to face.
Okay.
Typically we have a group of about 8 individuals and we'll have a staff member accompanying them, who the idea is for that person to be somewhat of a mentor and to encourage and help facilitate application of several of the things that are discussed and learned, as well as we go through our presentation, our very informal and loose presentation here. We have assignments of sorts that we call the weekly challenge, where people will actually be given the opportunity to apply some of the information that they're given during our focus groups.
Oh, that's great, yeah.
And oftentimes we try to find videos that people will find relatable. So that's where our technology, sometimes if the internet is quite functioning as it should, we have to come up with some alternatives.
Believe me, I fully understand technological problems, as was demonstrated just a few minutes ago.
Okay, and to add to mine is left-handedness, so I keep clicking around trying to move the slide forward. So our focus is more on what to do rather than what not to do. And we just see this at a lot of levels, that a lot of the folks here, the don't do that, don't do this,
right.
But we're trying to change that. We're focusing on the responsibilities that go with rights. We were talking how, for example, early in my career, in the early 80s, there was a period of time when I was working in the developmental center where there was a big push to get everybody to the polls to vote, but there was not that equal push to provide people the opportunity to be informed and therefore vote responsibly.
That's a great point, because, we often say everybody should vote. Well, you really should vote only if you're at least getting some basic information about whom to vote for. Otherwise, it's not really a responsible vote.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of folks, I guess they technically have the right to vote based on something superficial, but it's really not the way it should be.
Right.
So anyway, I guess we have some assumptions that our project is based on, and that is everybody wants to be successful. I think that's a fairly safe assumption, and then pretty much lifted, as you know, Bruce, from DBT. In any moment, each person is doing the best that he or she can based upon what he or she knows. And our final assumption is that people who don't know what's best to do are probably going to do something else. So, this needs stressing. It's not group therapy, it's not counseling, behavior analysis, or a clinical intervention. We're trying to set this up and design it to where, with some training, anyone can facilitate the program.
So, one of the things that we looked at when we put this together is that we wanted the people that were supporting in our group to actively share information with us. So, one of the assumptions we had was that sometimes they don't have the knowledge or the skills to be as successful. One thing Eddie and I talked about, he's got many years of experience in doing work at Harold Jordan Center, and I've done years of work with forensics, is that a lot of times people aren't aware of what their rights are, again, their responsibilities, and when we don't have that knowledge, they're not going to be as successful, but they need to be able to interact with each other, and a lot of times there's a huge focus on just interacting with staff. So part of this was kind of a group to learn how to interact with people in the community, not just, hey, my staff person needs to do this. So go ahead.
No, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I was just going to say, I think it's such an important point you're emphasizing because, what I've found in working with people, a lot of people with disabilities over the years is that a lot of times we assume they have particular pieces of knowledge, and I think, we assume that people have a lot of knowledge about how to be a good citizen, but yet a lot of people probably end up getting through their educational system or through their family life, whatever else that they might have learned that from and not gotten that information. And so it seems to me to be such a critical assumption that a lot of people need that knowledge.
There have been many times over the years where I've asked a person, what do you need to do to be successful? And their response is, be good. And then if I ask, what does be good mean? The response is, don't be bad.
Right. Going back to your earlier point, they don't know what to do with it. They just know what to not do with it.
Exactly.
And then we've also been in a system that has taken care of the problem so often, and then we get to a point sometimes that we can't take care of that problem.
Yeah.
They're the ones that have to face that consequence. And so that was part of that knowledge that we wanted to share with them.
Yeah, it's all, there are a lot of parallels, in my opinion, to the old classic psychology, the Stanford prison experiment, where people were just cast in these roles with uniforms, and they weren't given any direction on here's what you do, and so what emerges ultimately is bad behavior.
Yeah, that was that Stanford prison experiment where they had the guards that were basically given carte blanche to do whatever they wanted to do to manage the prison, and so they abused people pretty significantly in that study, and as such, that study I think was scheduled to last 2 weeks. It lasted about 6 days because it was so abusive.
Yeah. Well,
this is Stephen Bell, and in fact, just relatively recently, they revisited it because of the issues that emerged.
Yeah. There is an excellent book by Zimbardo. It's the Lucifer Effect.
Yeah.
And he goes into considerable detail. I think there's a lot of relevance of what's in that book also to providers, and as far as training staff or failing to provide adequate training to staff. Folks just kind of jump into what they assume that role is supposed to be.
A great lesson about what happens when you give rights without having any kind of responsibilities.
Yes, very good. Thank you. And so, I just have to bring in a little, reference here to the, music from when the universe meant something. But again, this is all about giving information and hoping people learn and hoping people make the choice to use the information wisely. While we hope for desired behavior change with this program, I'll call it, I consider it successful if the person acquires the information. If they misuse, if they make the less desirable choice, that's unfortunate, but that's not, by my standards, what we consider failure. And I also want to back up one thing I should have mentioned earlier. When we first were putting this together, I've got a couple of things I need to mention. First, I need to mention Chan Quaymore was very much a part of getting this started. She retired about a year and a half ago, and she was the East Region Customer Focus Coordinator at the time. She was kind of the spark that lit a fire under me, and Shannon was the fuel. She really helped just immensely in getting together materials for this. But we're focusing on primarily the population it's designed for in a very general way are the folks who, if it weren't for their behavioral health challenges, would likely be living independently or semi-independently.
I think that's such an important point you're making there, Andy, too, for clinicians in particular, because a lot of times I think clinicians want to take responsibility for all of the outcomes that come out. And obviously, if things aren't working with someone, we want to try to do something that will work. We want to try to find a strategy that's going to help. But ultimately, there does have to be some responsibility of the person. In fact, if we usurp too much of that responsibility, we're actually not giving them the opportunity to succeed in the way that we want them to. So, very valid point you're making.
Right, and then we're also trampling all over their rights.
Yes.
Yeah. It's unfortunate, but we do all have the right to fall on our face or our hindquarters. So, as what I'll refer to as a series, the various times we meet with a single group, how we've been doing that thus far is we'll communicate with a provider, and we'll expect them to have to identify 8 folks and ask them when we're meeting, which what we've done is every other week, and these run for about an hour and a half each time. And it would be great if we could do it more frequently, but every one of us, this is an add-on. We're squeezing this into all of the other expectations on us. But we'd like them to have a consistent staff person as the mentor. So they're picking up on the information and reinforcing applications, reminding and so forth throughout the week. We encourage participation by all, or we expect the provider to do that and to facilitate their attendance and to encourage the completion of those things we will refer to and go into a little more detail of the weekly challenges. We'll also ask the provider to arrange for local guests. Typically that's been like a police officer as we get later into the series.
And we do it from 5:30 to 7 p.m.
We do. We did have one once in the afternoon, but yeah, we've tried to make this in the evenings. And I know this is somewhat stereotyping, but I want to avoid, or I want to avoid giving excuses to folks not to get out there and find a job. So it's stereotyping in that, well, everybody's got a day job. Well, we know that's not the case, but most of us, that is the case. So we try not to cut into that. We do have these group rules.
So one of the things when we're in our group, we want to make sure everybody understands that we have a responsibility to each other to hear each other and to respect the rights of other folks. Like we want them to know that they're safe, that they can talk about things with us, and we can all be open and honest. But they have the right to be informed. It's our job to make sure that we give them as much information as possible. But the biggest, I think, that we come across is that we all need to respect each other's opinions, but to let other people know if they're offended. You don't want somebody leaving a group and saying, I can't believe we talked about that. It's about really kind of having an awareness, which a lot of folks don't. There's a tendency just to, I think, react versus hear. And so while it's not a therapy group, we don't want it to be a therapy group. It is about learning rules on how to interact together.
That's such an important skill too. I was just speaking with somebody this is a fellow with an autism spectrum disorder the other day, and somebody was talking to him, asking him about something that was uncomfortable, that he didn't particularly want to talk about maybe, or that gave an opinion about his behavior that the person didn't like. And the person was kind of unaware that he had the ability to agree to disagree, so to speak, and to allow other people to have their opinion while he had his opinion. And I think that's such a critical thing that many of the folks we serve don't understand.
Sometimes it's almost everywhere, especially if you get into political discussions. It happens in our groups. People don't want to agree to disagree.
I agree. Somebody actually that you mentioned somebody was talking about, it's almost like we're in the Civil War now. I do think people are a little bit more respectful than we were in the Civil War. And for the most part, we aren't trying to kill one another over it. But it is, I do think there has to be some understanding of the fact that other people have valid opinions, and that is part of being a citizen of this country, to do that, to have people with other opinions. And in fact, Andy, you brought up dialectical behavior therapy, but in fact, it's probably essential to our survival is to have people who think differently than us.
Yeah, how boring would it be if there weren't the differences?
Exactly.
So, we've had, mentioned that I think when we've met so far, it's been over 6 different meetings, and one thing we have learned is it really needs more. We're also finding there are folks that it probably would be good for them to be involved in something like this on an ongoing basis. But as far as what we cover in these sessions, they're kind of put in a sequence, and we're trying to set it up yet even more to where there's a lot of reflecting back to where we pull an earlier bit of information or skill up to how it could be applied in the topics we're discussing here later in the series. But our topics include rights and responsibilities, responsibilities accompanying rights, rules, laws, courtesies, rules as signposts to success, strategies for decision making, and strategies for coping. And several of those will have a lot of visual examples. We'll have interactive sorts of activities such as a picture of folks picking up trash after a rock concert. And, is this a law? Are they practicing following a law, a rule, or a courtesy? And just kind of helping people, encouraging people to think. And then some of the strategies for coping, we have some simple exercises and we'll get a bit more into that later. But Shannon's got her finger on the button to go to the next slide, which is good.
So one of the first things we talk about is starting about living at home sweet home. What most of us want is independence living in our home, but we're sort of used to other people, at least in our system, other people taking care of that, or if we have problems, reacting to it versus dealing with it. And oftentimes Andy and Jerry and I will tell personal stories of our own life to try and make this relatable, but they need to understand that they live in an apartment. And there's rules for an apartment. Rules that can affect the police coming, rules that can affect getting kicked out of the home, rules that can affect their income and how that income is spent. So what we try to do is get them to think about that. Even go look at your lease. What are the rules for your lease? You may have signed it, but do you even know what's in it? And sharing, because many of the people that we support have to share a household. So what are kind of the rules that you should be doing when you live with somebody else? Did you actually eat their pizza if it's in the fridge, even if you really are hungry and you really want it, but it's not yours? And so there's usually a lot of interaction about things that they do and don't like when they're in a home.
Yeah.
That's great. It's sort of like explaining the unexplained, stuff that you kind of assume everybody knows, but they don't, and really helping people understand the background to it. That's great.
And I'll tell you, one of the things that the people that really seem to enjoy, we'll find video clips that give examples. They'll pick on Friends. They love the clips that come from Friends or from The Big Bang Theory on how you live with other folks. There's some great examples in those old shows.
The Big Bang Theory, especially, I suppose.
There's an algorithm for friendship in there, yes.
And so then we also get, of course, into relationships and building friendships, belonging to a group, dating, having a long-term committed relationship. You and the people you rely on. Well, this was a good one. This was pre-Jerry, but we may not have shared this story with him, but this was one of our, may have been our first encounter with, maybe we should modify this a bit, because we presented to this first group. We were talking about friends, and then we were talking about your relationship with your staff person and how the staff person has all these multiple roles, such as mentor and teacher and on and on. But we said, but the staff person is not your friend. And particularly the agency staff, their mouth was dropping. So we kind of changed that, but also along that line, a change we are in the process of making in all of the materials as we're developing them is trying to eliminate altogether any use of the word staff. Because again, the intention is independence. The ultimate goal is independence. So, we're taking staff off the table.
That's great, because I think all too often our goal is dependence, really, and essentially a state of dependence is one where you're taking all the responsibility and the person doesn't learn anything about responsibility. So that's pretty key.
And we wanted people to understand that their staff are there to support them. They're not there to give them everything that they want, to do everything that they want, and they're not responsible for doing everything for them. You can't just say, go get me some milk and expect the milk to magically show up in front of you. That's not moving towards independence.
No.
And we connected to it being in the community. What folks can do to be successful in the community? Volunteering, working in the community, we talk about that a lot. Enjoying the resources in your community, and how to be an active and contributing member of your community. I think that the weekly challenges really go into those areas.
And that seems to me to be one of the things that so many people are missing. And once that happens, I'm imagining that, a lot of people are really experiencing a lot greater feeling about themselves and, as a lot more feeling of belonging to their community when they're actively contributing.
Well, and they're also expanding the relationships that they have, and that's how we tie a lot of these units, I suppose we call them, together. Because once you're working in the community, you're developing relationships. That's where many of us find our friends, our spouses, our significant others.
Yep, that's exactly right.
And then while I guess on the front end, we're primarily focusing on the positives, we do sort of wrap up, I guess, what winds up being the last couple of meetings, talking about the laws, spending a little bit of time on civil laws, but looking a lot at criminal laws, and helping folks discriminate between misdemeanors, felonies, interacting, what to do if the police officer stops you and is asking you questions, what to do if you're getting arrested, going to court, and then consequences of breaking the law.
And one of the things we really try to emphasize the importance of the law enforcement are there as our friends. They're not there to be bad people, but they're there because they're ensuring the safety of everybody, not just trying to take care of troublemakers.
Right, and we're also, as far as the consequences of breaking the law, we try to look at that big social community picture of not just the punishment that the lawbreaker experiences, but how all of us as citizens suffer consequences of crime, not just directly as the victim, but how prices go up, how we may not feel as safe in our neighborhood, and so on.
And I was going to bring up one other thing about this is, unfortunately, people who have intellectual disabilities don't understand their rights very often when it comes to this. And so far too often, because of the training they've had through their educational years, is they often confess right away to what they've done. And then they've sort of blown their ability to defend themselves in a court of law oftentimes. So we really try to emphasize that as well, to make sure that they understand that they have rights, and because of their disability, maybe they might need assistance.
They have the right to remain silent.
Yes.
And Shannon, you should understand those things very well, since you have trained many, many people across the region in their rights and participating in their becoming competent to stand trial. So
many of the things I've done with that have been incorporated into our PowerPoint.
Yeah.
From the Slater manuals and from the forensics, so they at least can't say they weren't exposed to it at some point if they've been through one of our groups.
Yeah, you mentioned the Slater method. Just since you used that word, can you tell us just in a sentence or two what that's about?
Sure. For people who are not competent to stand trial, if training is attempted to help them become competent, we use what's called the Slater manual, and it's a manual that's got several modules on how to become competent, how to learn different parts of the court system, like what a judge does, what your attorney does, how do we act in court, all things that would assist a person if they needed to stand trial.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and so like in this too, we got created as far as one of the exercises to inspire interaction, a scenario of a crime involving vandalism, but it's one that can be taken several different directions. It could be leading to a discussion about hate crimes, because the person whose car is vandalized is a person whose name pretty much suggests they're of Middle Eastern descent. We also selected the vandalizing the car because in our system, that's one of those behaviors we sometimes see when I'm pissed off at my staff. The best way to get them is to key their car or bust their windshield. But we carry that too into discussions of looking at different types of defense, and also the kinds of evidence that can be, and how, if you're that person, well, we ask the participants to be to take the role of the defense attorney. And here's this set of evidence. How are you going to advise the person to plead? So we're trying to work in more and more to where there's going to be more and more interaction by the folks.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So let's see. So being possibly somewhat redundant here, our activities include PowerPoints, facilitator guided discussions, videos, scenarios. We mentioned some of the exercises and coping skills. We use the meditation on the soles of my feet that I think, it may have been back in Encouragement Network days that was shared on this. But, one thing I like about this particular strategy is it doesn't require your bedroom. It doesn't require a mat. You can do it anywhere. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. It's something that we all have been lax about, and as far as doing it as systematically as it was set up to be in our series. So we're getting back to that. One thing I wanted to share was an individual I was speaking with. Our first group, I think it was 2.5 years ago, and let's see, I was speaking with an agency director just recently, and just kind of coincidentally asked her about how is Horatio, not his real name, how is Horatio doing? And he's doing great. Andy, he still uses that on his feet thing when he gets upset. And so I went and I looked at our incident data, and in the 9 calendar quarters preceding that led up to essentially was a calendar quarter in which we ran this first group, in those 9 consecutive prior to that, he was averaging 8.7 serious behavioral health related incidents per quarter. In the 9 calendar quarters consecutive that followed, he averaged 2 2.4 per calendar quarter. And adding to that, over the last 3.5 calendar quarters, there have been no serious behavioral incidents.
Wow, that's a great outcome there.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of course, other variables at play, we're sure, but just the fact that he's still doing this, and he's also, I guess, one of our stars in that he helped plant the idea for the future of being able to use some of the folks who have been through this as mentors. So somewhere down the line, us or maybe someone could get some kind of grant to be able to pay folks to, be
mentors,
facilitators. So anyway, we've also other game shows.
The game shows, this came out of some of my early work when I worked at Green Valley, starting about 20 years ago. We held socialization groups because one of the needs that we saw was people weren't interacting with each other. And there was a program called Stacking the Deck that had some research showing that we could do some games to try and get people to learn a little bit more about each other, to learn how to act in certain situations. So Andy and Pam and I developed these game shows where each of them forms a team. They get to name them things like the Superstars or the Avengers or whatever name they want, and they really embrace that.
Mostly something that only young people know these days.
And what they do is they take turns answering questions or doing role plays in situations. The situations for each of the different modules that we have, whether it's about relationship and dating, what do you do when a woman says no? Because they need to practice that skill when somebody says no, don't touch. And they sometimes giggle and aren't as comfortable, and sometimes we have to jump in there and help with the role play, but it's very good practice for them.
What you're pointing out there, especially as it relates to interactions with women or with people for whom you have a romantic interest, is of critical importance. I don't know if people get really enough instruction about how to handle that interaction. Generally, not just people with disabilities, but even in general. To get that information. I'm assuming we get a lot more now than we have in the past, but it's of critical importance that people learn about how that interaction is to take place and the whole idea of consent.
Well, even learning how to ask somebody out versus learning how to break up successfully, which we all know can sometimes lead down a very terrible path. That's a life skill for anybody to learn how to do.
So
those are some of the things that we took on.
It's not just the skill of consent to social activity, but the consent to lots of different activities and, leaving people open enough choice to be able to say no to certain things, even going on a date or doing anything that you know you ask for.
Right. And we also give a weekly, what we didn't want to call it homework, we wanted to call it a challenge. And so we give them some sort of a challenging activity to complete so that they're ready to talk about it the next time that we get together. And it may be things like looking at our lease. What are some of the rules of your leases? We want you to go and look at the newspaper, find one crime by somebody. It doesn't have to be somebody with a disability. Look at one crime and see if you can figure out what the consequences are. So if somebody got charged with vandalism, have somebody help you look at what is the possible sentence that you could serve for that. Or look on the news and see if you can find something of interest. Because we want them to see that every one of us are accountable for our actions, not just that individual person. And get them thinking, becoming more of an active participant in their life.
And one thing that I'm sure will come as a surprise is that because this is our services or the services are voluntary. People don't come just because of my charm or Shannon's charm or Jerry's good looks. So, we have found it necessary to include other incentives. Versus, again, back in my days at the Jordan Center, which it was quite a different place than it is now. And, it was a captive audience. You're going to be there. Whether Andy discussed you or not, you're going to have to be there. Well, so the primary incentive we've been using has been a $50 bill. And we let people know off the bat it's basically set up like a lottery. You get a point for every time you're here on time. You get a point for every meeting that you are here when we conclude, and you get a point for bringing back your weekly challenge. And so the more points you have, the more times your name goes in the hat for the drawing at the end of the series for the $50 bill.
Has that been pretty effective on getting the homework done? That seems to be one of the biggest difficulties I think a lot of clinicians experience is when they assign homework, getting folks to do it. Have you found that to be pretty effective?
I think they want to do it. Some of them forget that that seems to be more the participation of the agency in encouraging that too.
And I'm going to say yes because it's also one of those things that an individual will come in and one of the first things they think of is, I forgot can I bring it next time? Or if they've got it, they're handing it to us as they pass through the door. So I think there is, I'm going to assume that the $50 has an influence on that. It would for me.
Yes, certainly would for me, no question.
But, we've also relied a lot upon the provider as far as the encouraging and we've seen considerable range in the different providers we've worked with. The first couple of groups were with a provider that agency went all out. They were catering a meal for everyone and providing everyone with gift cards. All the participants with gift cards and all sorts of incentives. Then we had one group where we had folks from different agencies attend. The attendance was not all that great, but I guess we got down to about half by the end who had not dropped out. And what was really cool about that was that these folks from different agencies decided they wanted to, after the last meeting, we all go out to eat somewhere together. So, there were some new relationships developed.
We also get the certificate of completion.
Yeah.
They graduated from the program and they're done.
That's great, yeah.
So, where we are with it now, our next step is to refine the materials to broaden the range of learners. We're in the process of creating what I'll call a facsimile of a user's manual to accompany the PowerPoints. There's an additional PowerPoint that we've been using for the meditation on the soles of my feet. We would like to create something that would be also give a little more direction for those staff members who are participating or caregivers, mentors, whatever we wish to call them. plan to develop a pre and post test, which by that I just mean, a sample of questions that are going to sample the material that's covered, because again, that's what I consider, and I think the rest of us agree as the measure of the worth of this is, are they acquiring the information? And then, once we get all that done, which, like I say, we squeeze this in amongst other obligations, but I'm going to say I'd like to think we're maybe somewhere this summer getting to the point to where we, like if there are people and entities interested in willing to facilitate at least one of a series in their setting, then we want to establish a memorandum of agreement with them, and we'll provide them all the materials and ask of them to commit to review the materials, to participate in at least one preparatory meeting with us, which would probably be a WebEx, and to arrange for the place and the participants that they're going to have to administer the pre and post test, and to facilitate at least one series, and then to participate in another meeting to debrief afterwards, with the primary intention to be to further refine this, because from there we'd like to have something that could be utilized in other contexts such as DCS and special ed settings, because my opinion, that's where it really needs to be.
Yeah.
And because the folks that we see, not saying it's too late, but I am saying that they would be living independently or semi-independently now if they had this information earlier.
Absolutely. And so many people, they're held accountable for something that they do in adulthood that they didn't learn when they were younger, and that is it's almost a travesty in and of itself that people, they don't experience the consequence of it until it is too late. And so, getting that earlier is going to be much, much better.
Yeah, and many of the people that I see with forensics, the majority of them are not service recipients, have never even thought of applying for service.
And back to my Jordan Center days, I noticed when I was there, a disproportionately large number of the folks who were there at that time had their encounter, their first conflict with the criminal justice system sometime during that late adolescent to about age 25, when transition just fell apart.
Yeah.
I'm in school and now I've got nothing to do.
Such an important thing.
Our contact information, at least from what I see on our computer, it's 2:30 or it's 2:30 in the east.
Are you willing to share your PowerPoint?
Well, that's Bruce. Once we get those ready, I'd kind of backing up to those last couple of slides. Of course, this PowerPoint, sure, but as far as the other stuff, we want to do a little more work on it.
Yeah, I think it'd be good if you would be willing to share this PowerPoint just to give people some ideas, that they might move forward with, and then as you get your other materials, certainly hope to help you with that as well. And I just want to congratulate the three of you. This is, you're showing your citizenship by putting this program together. And I think it's very inspiring. And so I really appreciate you guys coming on today and sharing what you've done. This is really important work. And so thank you so much for that. And remember, everybody out there, this is the Clinical Consultation Network. We do this every Tuesday at 12:30 Central Time. And I hope you can join us next week.